Hi, I'm Josh Rushing, and you're in the stream. Today, are political campaigns using your online personal data to win votes? We'll look at the role of data mining in U.S. elections. Our digital producer, Malika Bilal, is here looking out for your live feedback. So tweet her using the hashtag AJStream. Malika, what's the community saying about this?
Well, Josh, so many of us are used to having our private information made public that many of our community members are saying this really isn't that different.
I wonder if it's different for younger people who are digital natives who came up in Facebook and Twitter.
Right, and are used to putting our information out there.
Yeah.
Well, for those of you at home, if you agree or want to chime in on the conversation, tweet us with the hashtag AJStream.
Joining us in the studio today is Alex Howard. He is the Washington correspondent for O'Reilly Media, where he covers the relationship between technology, government, and society. Alex, welcome to the program. I look forward to seeing if the young digital natives feel the same way after we have our discussion or not.
We'll see. Sometimes what people know about you can change the way you feel, and that's certainly true with elections and the kinds of data targeting we're seeing.
Absolutely. All right, the stream is a show that's powered by you. And one way that you can contribute to our conversation is by submitting a video comment. Just go to our website at stream.aljazeera.com, scroll down and find the red button on the right that says record your comment. Click on that. You'll see the pop-up screen. Follow the instructions there, and the next thing you know, you too could be in the stream.
Hi, I'm Susan Levin. I'm with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and I promote a healthy diet to prevent chronic disease, and I'm in the stream.
Could collecting and analyzing large amounts of personal online data, an act that's also known as data mining, be the key to winning the 2012 U.S. election? Major presidential campaigns are spending loads of cash to get as much personal information on voters as possible. Through public records, social media, and web browsing history, political campaigns can now know whether you gamble, go to church, visit pornographic websites, and what products you're buying online. And information like this is being used to micro-target voters with more precision than ever before. Critics of data mining say there are few regulations as to how personal information campaigns can collect and potentially pass on about U.S. citizens. So how is the data mining industry changing the strategy of political campaigns? And what are the threats to privacy? Joining us to discuss these issues is Trevor Timm of the Electronic Frontier Foundation. He's an advocate for government transparency and digital privacy rights. He's joining us via Skype from San Francisco. And from Washington, we have Tim Murphy, a reporter for Mother Jones Magazine. His latest work focuses on the role of political data mining in the 2012 presidential campaigns. Tim and Trevor, welcome to you both. Tim, I want to start off by asking you, just how personal are these campaigns getting? Give us an idea of the type of data campaigns have and how they're getting it.
Sure. Well, it's getting increasingly personal, and it seems like it gets more personal with every passing day. That's because what they're doing is they're building upon years of data that they've collected. And it doesn't just start with online. This is something that dating back to about 2002, 2004, campaigns have been doing more and more of, starting with the use of consumer databases from companies like Axiom. And so from there, they're able to look and get a sense of, what kind of magazines you buy, what kind of television programs you watch, what kind of clothing stores you frequent, and use that in conjunction with all of your political giving, in conjunction with your voting history, your volunteer history, whether you brought brownies to a canvassing event, that kind of thing, and put them all together in one giant pot to sort of figure out your political identity.
Trevor, what's the problem with this? It seems like it's something that I think campaigns have done for a long time. Karl Rove started this back in the late 90s, but he didn't have the internet with him to do it then.
Right. They've always tried to, use voters' information to target advertising at them. But I think this is to a whole new level. I mean, the New York Times, in their opening paragraph, described it as a scale never before imagined. So they're using these companies like Axiom and Equifax, which are actually under congressional scrutiny, by the way. A couple weeks ago, Senator Rockefeller.
All right, so it seems like we're having a problem with the connection with Trevor. Alex, I want to come to you. we're saying that this is being done now on a scale never before imagined. Can you tell me what they're doing and how they're doing it?
Well, this was imagined. It has been imagined before. It's just it was in science fiction, right? Now it's actually possible for the campaigns to use the new techniques of data mining to pull together massive amounts of databases and to get insight from them in terms of not just how people have voted, but who they voted for, potentially, what their interests are, and even down to the point of where they might be likely to see an ad. So there's been a bunch of really great reporting on this coming out of different places. Sasha Eisenberg has written a great book called The Victory Lab that goes through the whole history and the development of this. But the key to thinking about it is that these data sets can be combined, sliced, diced, and then, as you mentioned earlier, used to micro-target people and to understand where the potential voters might be in a population and to put ads in front of them. Now, it's easy to focus upon the online aspect of it because that's the thing that's different. Where so many more of us are online now. We might be on Facebook. We might be getting cookies, and those cookies might be following us in a persistent way from site to site and tracking us, and then that information is coming back. But it's really what you just mentioned here about having the existing databases be combined with that. And certainly the class of data brokers out there has a lot more information on the average citizen than probably Facebook does. When you put them together, however, you get to see some really interesting insights into people's interest graphs, right? Who they're influenced by, what they're reading, what they click on, and actually have that activity shared with their friends. Now that's really interesting to campaigns because you get influenced by your peers in ways you might not by the politician themselves.
One of the ways that this starts to cross the line into creepy for me is the idea that they have cookies on my computer and they're following, without me knowing it, to other websites that I'm going to. It's one thing that they're collecting all the information I post about myself on Facebook, right? But the fact that they're collecting this stuff and I don't realize that, like this is just between me and my laptop and oh yeah, the Obama campaign. That's where it starts to cross the line. What's the community saying about that?
Well, I think you raised an interesting point, but what Aaron here on Twitter raises is the fact that some of us are doing this willingly. Who doesn't have access to our personal information, he asks, I think a little bit tongue-in-cheek. It should not affect my decision-making ability as to whom I choose to vote for, I think he means. Tim, I'd like to direct that to you. Would you argue that this is affecting people's decision-making abilities?
Yeah, well, I think sort of in regards to what Aaron asked, one of the interesting things that they do is there is sort of a little amount of trickery, as there is with a lot of what we do online and a lot of the ways we provide data online. For instance, if one of the ways the Obama campaign would get your data, or for that respect, Tim Pawlenty's short-lived presidential campaign would get your data, is to get you to log into their campaign via Facebook. They present it as a very simple way to get you to engage in the community. But by logging in via Facebook, you essentially, you consent to giving up some of the information that you would not normally be able to get. Talking basic biographical information like, gender, age, occupation, as well as unlocking, your circle of friends, and they can start to figure out who is influential in your community, who would be the best person to approach you, or who would you be the best person to approach in terms of persuading someone else to vote. So from one very simple click of a button that you might not put very much thought into, all of a sudden it opens up this whole new can.
We have Trevor back on the phone with us, so I want to go back to him. Trevor, what's the position on this from where you're coming from?
Well, I think there's two different perspectives here. There's one type of information that you're willingly giving out that you're posting on Facebook. And,
right. That's what I was talking about.
Exactly, and I think that's more justifiable that they're using this information to learn more about voters and what they like. But then there's the other side of things, which are the cookies that they're installing on people's computers that allow them to see whether they're visiting pornographic websites, going to gambling websites, if they have financial problems, or who they're dating. This is information that is incredibly personal that people don't probably realize that they're giving out. And campaigns are using it to target them, and potentially they're using it in ways that many people can find out about this information that people wouldn't want to. The New York Times article talks about how dossiers are being collected on these people, and then that type of information is used when these friends or long-lost relatives are calling these people. So it's really a fine line about what they're doing with this information. And there's another side to this. It's where they're actually getting it. A lot of this information is coming from companies that are actually under congressional scrutiny right now. Senator Rockefeller sent a letter to many of these companies that these campaigns are engaged with, asking them where they're getting this information, how personal it's getting, and whether people actually know that they're giving it out at all.
Mike, I want to go to you next, but I want to pull up a website here, see if we can get our audience to see it. It's called Politics of the Social Web. What do your favorite websites say about your politics? And anyone online or anyone who's watching that wants to go to this online, it's on our Storyfy page, but you can also see it on the screen here. So the websites that are to the left of the screen are more likely to be Obama voters, and to the right are more likely to be Romney voters. To the bottom are the least politically active, so people who play Angry Birds, not very politically active. At the top are the most politically active. So if you look at, say, PayPal, eBay users, your commerce sites on the web, their users tend to be very politically active and lean far toward being Romney voters. I find it surprising that Reddit users are on the lower end of political engagement. For as much as they talk about politics, they don't engage in it much, but they do lean toward Obama voters. Malika, is anyone in the community talking about this and what this says about
I think
them?
now you just mentioned it, they will be, but
Okay.
I have a tweet here that references something that Trevor said a little bit earlier. He talked about the problematic thing about where they're getting this, where the campaigns are getting this information. Spencer Chumbley, who's a member of your team on Fault Lines, says it's no longer about the economy, foreign policy, it's about the sell. Borrowing tools from the ad industry shows this. He follows up with, more importantly, its use is indicative of how deeply corporate and capitalist tactics have penetrated our political system. Alex, would you agree with that?
Well, look, campaigns are designed to win someone higher office, right? And it's not a surprise to see with every successive wave of technology that they're going to adopt it. Now, one of the things that is worth pointing out here is Charles Duhigg, who Trevor mentioned, wrote a good article just recently about how campaigns are doing this. He wrote something earlier this year which is sort of riffing off of his book called The Power of Habit. And he talked about how Target, the company we all know, was actually able to tell a young woman was pregnant before her father was, using all of her shopping habits and all of these different data sets sliced and diced together.
I actually just tweeted this out right before the show. This was an amazing article. I read the book as well, but the article is definitely worth all of our viewers going and checking out.
There's a great reporter here in town named Kashmir Hill who wrote the headline that pulled that fact out of that article, right? And they really opened people's eyes to what the power of big data, as we call it now, is to target people within the retail experience.
So wait, let's go into this just for a second, just so everyone understands. Target can know a woman is pregnant before perhaps her family knows that she's pregnant because of the things that she buys, and they see patterns of what women who are just learned they're pregnant start to buy. They buy certain types of lotions. So Target knows, and they start sending coupons to the house for diapers and cribs. And on this one occasion, this family started getting these coupons in for a 17-year-old girl, and the father goes to Target. It's like, why are you sending all these baby coupons to my daughter? And the manager says, well, I don't know. He comes back the next week and says, turns out you knew before I did, she actually is pregnant. And that is remarkable that a corporation can tell that about an individual. So now they're using it, the exact same technology in the political landscape. And I have to say, I'm comfortable with a certain part of it because I do put a lot of information out there, but there is a certain part that I think starts to get creepy. Tim, I want to come to you here and I want to ask, the part of it that could get even scary is the part about shaming, the idea of shaming someone into following a certain behavior. Can you explain shaming as a strategy, and if either campaign or their super PACs are actually considering using that?
Yeah, so it's actually a really simple behavioral science concept that the campaigns are now finally starting to adapt, or at least the outside groups are starting to pick up on, which is the idea that, basic persuasion, efforts don't work. If you do a PSA with a bunch of Hollywood celebrities saying, you guys, you really need to vote, it's your obligation, no one votes because they saw that PSA. But if you send everyone on your block a mailer saying, hey, we're watching you, essentially, we're watching you, thank you for voting last time, thank you in advance for voting next time, then voter turnout goes up statistically significantly. And so they've started doing this. They've been doing it in mailers. They did it in 2010, and they found that it worked, for instance, in the Colorado Senate race. And they are starting to do it online via Facebook. And it taps into your network of friends. It taps into your neighbors, your community, and sort of gets at these basic social interactions and gets you to the polls.
But wait, what about the campaign actually being able to get a long-lost friend or a distant cousin to call you, and they know all these kind of personal things about you? They're actually personalizing the person that calls you, as opposed to it's just some random person at a call center. How are they doing that, and is that effective?
Well, that's something that comes up, for instance, through the Facebook Connect, through the system where you log in via Facebook to the campaign website, and all of a sudden they have access to your circle of friends. So they can suggest that you call your friends, and obviously it's up to you to determine, whether you'd be effective in that. But they've started, and I think this is the New York Times story, they've started studying the effectiveness of this. Because for instance, that an in-person phone call is much more effective than a robocall. So is a call from a close friend, from a second cousin, from a long-lost cousin more effective than the in-person phone call? That's what they're looking at now.
Well, there's a tweet here just on that very topic from Alexandra. She says, voting turnout is public record. Shaming mailers hold citizens accountable. But Trevor, we're talking about the problematic aspects to this. There's a video comment from a member of our community. I'd like you to have a listen. She widens this out a bit.
Hi, my name is Katie and I'm in Washington, D.C. My question is, looking beyond the United States, how have candidates in other countries' elections used big data to garner support? And what protections are currently in place or need to be in place to stop, say, up-and-coming repressive regimes from using big data to track individuals and cause harm? Thanks.
Are we seeing that, or could we see that, Trevor?
Well, I think the U.S. general election is always a precursor for what happens in other countries. And, right now we're seeing what the New York Times called data mining on a scale never before imagined. So it's only a matter of time before it goes to other countries. But I want to go back to another point made about this shaming and peer pressure on voting. There was actually a study done about a month ago about Facebook in particular, and just showing an I voted banner on your news feed and kind of showing that you voted and pressure, and that actually pressures your other friends to vote. They actually found that just that sign on Facebook pressured or forced about 60,000 people more to vote that wouldn't have otherwise voted. So I think the campaigns are trying to expand on that now. The question is how they go about it. And I think when people hear that they're about to be shaming people with their voting records on one hand, and then they hear on the other hand they have all this embarrassing information on them potentially, that they get nervous that, what if this information gets out, and what if they use this information for nefarious purposes? The campaigns both have talked about privacy, online privacy in their campaign platforms. And, the Obama administration came out with a Consumer's Privacy Bill of Rights just a few months ago, talking about these tactics used by these advertising companies to target people, and saying that people should be able to opt out, and saying that these companies need to be transparent. Unfortunately, people can't opt out of this situation right now. And the campaigns actually haven't been that transparent. If it wasn't for this New York Times article and this reporter, we may not know to the extent that they're doing this.
Trevor, what can people do to protect themselves from this?
Well, there's something called Do Not Track that's being negotiated right now between advertisers and civil society groups, which basically asks advertisers to respect a consumer's decision to opt out of this kind of tracking. So you would essentially click a button on your browser saying, I don't want to be tracked, and these advertisers would have to oblige and not take this detailed information about all your web history in. Unfortunately, the ad industry is now fighting these negotiations, and it's unclear if it's ever going to get actually put into place. The Obama administration has supported this, like I said, and they've been really pushing for consumers to have a choice. Unfortunately, right now, there is no choice, and these campaigns are getting this information on people that nobody would have ever thought possible 4 years ago.
I'm really struck by you saying that 60,000 people were influenced to vote just by seeing on Facebook that their friends had voted before them. And I think back to the election of 2000 with Bush v. Gore. The whole election turned on less than, say, 500 votes in South Florida. So 60,000 votes could really make a difference. And imagine what a different world it is, for better or worse, if you're looking at President Gore and Lieberman in the White House as opposed to Bush Cheney in the White House on 9/11. So, I mean, these small things, I voted on Facebook, could have worldwide impact and influence. How important will data mining be in this election?
Well, first, I just say, Trevor mentioned people being pressured to vote. I think we should just take a quick step back and ask if more people voting is a good thing or not, right? I think there is clearly some role for these new networks to create new opportunities for civic engagement, for participation. If more of my friends vote, if more of my friends register because I share that choice on the social networks, I think that's a net good, right? Even if they don't vote and on policies or for politicians that I might support or not. Now, to this point you just made, the question will it make a difference? Well, I think that's certainly the hope of the campaigns. This election could come down to just 15 counties, right? We know that it's close in Ohio. We know that it's close in Florida. We know it's close in Virginia and other states, battleground states, as they say. We also know if you look at the electoral college breakdown in the United States, it's pretty much dependent upon those states. So it could really go down to block by block, whether the campaign knows to target these people who might be wavering, whether the campaign knows to put an ad at the bus station of these 27 people
So
who
you're
are in
saying
a
it could
cluster.
very well make a difference in this election?
I think it could, but remember too that we're talking about this election on the day when the second presidential debate. Right. Now the president has to show up in a different way, and we'll talk about that tonight on the episode where we get into that. If there's a huge swing in the polls because of those, then this may not be enough to change that on its own.
The closer the election is, the more important data mining will be. Tim, I want to go to you. The New York Times says 4 years ago this was never before imagined. What are we looking at in 2 years ahead and 4 years ahead? Where does this go into the future?
Well, that's sort of the big open question. In many respects, we don't really know what's going on this year even. It's the type of thing that you don't really find out about in full until it's all over, until the tell-all books are written and that kind of thing. They keep this really closely under the wraps. Just going back to something Trevor said in terms of something that's happening this year, the New York Times talking about how campaigns now have access to whether or not you've been visiting X-rated websites and that kind of thing. To be clear, that's not something that's actually in the hands of a canvasser, so far as we know. It's the type of thing that they put it into a model, and then from there they figure out sort of very broadly where that voter falls, whether or not, for instance, they'd be interested in a candidate who has an anti-pornography pledge, like Mitt Romney. But it's not as if someone in the field is actually has your browser history in front of you. But I think the further we go, the more deeply everyone is sort of interconnected on the web, the more and more we're going to see of this, and the greater it will be in scope.
Thanks, Tim, Alex, Trevor. We're going to return to our discussion on data mining in the online post show. But before we go, let's go to Malika with some other stories that we're following.
A U.S. clothing company is under fire for a T-shirt that's deemed offensive to Native Americans, and it sparked an angry online campaign. The Manifest Destiny shirt, sold by The Gap, uses a slogan referring to a 19th century view that white Americans were destined to expand across the continent. Aaron Paquette, an Indigenous artist in Canada, altered the ad to explain why the term is offensive, writing, "Manifest Destiny was a policy of genocide on Native Americans." Well, as outrage over the shirt grew, so did the online response, with mock T-shirts like these circulating on the blog site Tumblr. An online petition demanding Gap apologize received more than 4,300 signatures. Gap quickly discontinued the shirt and responded to complaints on Twitter, saying, "Based on customer feedback, we will no longer sell the tee." Our next leads from Israel, where a ban on a song critical of the occupation has netizens upset. The lyrics, written by Israeli author Alona Kimhi, include the lines, "All ours, Israel's land. Learning cruelty is a matter of habit." Well, Israel's army radio banned the song, saying it debases soldiers. Others disagreed. Justin tweets, "Someone who thinks that's demeaning hasn't been to the West Bank." Lastly, out of Japan, swapping scents over cyberspace is now closer to reality. According to the site Rocket News 24, one perfume company has developed an app that lets users send smells via iPhones, using the device seen here. Users fill the attachment with the scent of their choice and push a button to release the smell. But for the aroma to send, both phones must have the attachment. Would a scented app entice you? Let us know. Tweet us at #AJStream. Josh,
Really?
are you enticed?
Really? Like, no, I can't. Why would
Warm cookies
warm cookies?
and other things.
Delicious warm cookies.
All right. Thanks, Malinka. Stay with us. The post show is next at stream.aljazeera.com. On the next show, how to beat consumerism and take the unnecessary stuff like smell-o-vision for iPhones out of your life. Until then, we'll see you online. All right, welcome back. You're in the Streams Online Post Show. We're talking about data mining and how the political campaigns in the U.S. are using personal online data to target voters for upcoming U.S. presidential election. Let's get back into the conversation. I actually want to start with someone brought up Equifax during it, saying that they were being sued over some privacy issues. We did reach out to Equifax today. We got a message from them. I'm reading an email right here that says, "It is important for you to understand that the majority of the marketing data we provide in the U.S. is regulated. Moreover, the smaller percentage of data that we do offer, which is unregulated, is anonymous and provided in an aggregate form. No individual names, addresses, or individual data is ever provided." So I guess what I want to ask, do you think, Alex, is a lot of this overblown, or are there real concerns to be had?
Well, I guess it depends what the negative outcomes are. I mean, I always like to talk in practical downstream outcomes, not just worries or fears, but does someone have affirmative rights to privacy within their home that was violated, for instance, by a drone looking in the window? Was your location tracked without there being a warrant? Was your phone tapped? I mean, these are things that are actual outcomes. We've had the tradition of a secret ballot in this country for a while now. If that's something that can no longer be secret, we should be having a conversation about that.
Just to tell you how secret that idea is, a secret ballot. My parents have been married for 50 years now. They don't tell each other who they voted for. And so the idea that someone's going to post on Facebook who you voted for really is a step way beyond a line that I know a lot of people would make a lot of people uncomfortable. Let me kick it over to Trevor. Trevor, are you still on the phone with us? No? Okay.
I'm here.
Oh, you are here, Trevor. Okay, great. So what do you think? Real concern here? Are we overblowing it in this election, but it's something to worry about down the road? Or how do you measure this up?
Well, I mean, I think any time that consumers are being tracked online without their consent, or at least that they're not aware that they gave consent, is something to worry about. Equifax does talk about how they keep this data anonymous, but it's curious when reading the New York Times article how specific the campaigns can, concentrate their efforts based on all this information. The companies have sort of refused to tell how they collect this information and what they're actually doing with it and who can buy it and how it is used. And that's why Congressman Rockefeller is actually asking them all for this information. There's been many calls for the FTC to also investigate these companies to make sure that this information is not becoming sort of de-anonymized, so that you can actually pinpoint a specific person and then look up his or her web histories. The problem is when they gather so much information, even if they don't have the person's name attached, they can often dial down using this information, using so many sorts of demographic areas like where you live, what type of house you have, what your sex is, and then slowly from there gain information about exactly who you are. So it's definitely important for these companies to be transparent, and it's even more important that consumers are able to opt out of this procedure.
Trevor, tell us one more time, what was the don't track or the stop tracking?
It's called Do Not Track.
Do Not Track?
So the idea is that people will be able to click a button within their browsers like Chrome or Firefox or Microsoft Internet Explorer and tell these internet companies that they want to opt out of this type of tracking, so that cookies won't be placed in your computer and that you won't be sending data back to these advertising companies telling them every website that you visit.
So if people are interested in supporting that as a political movement, is it going through Congress right now? Is there a website they go to? Is there a petition they sign? What happens?
You can go to EFF.org and find out all the information about it. Right now, it's actually a negotiation between advertisers and civil society groups. The hope is that we won't need legislation and advertisers will voluntarily, say yes to consumers and actually support Do Not Track.
We can put a link to that on our website.
Yeah, of course, we can definitely tweet one out. But on that note, we just got a tweet in from Alex Locke who says, a national Do Not Track registry would have a lot more support if tracking were anywhere near as invasive as robocalling. a few more sentiments here on Twitter. This is from Fabian who says, as far as the remove my name and I'm just an ID in a database, I don't see anything wrong with it, meaning data mining. And one more from Ibrahim who says, have you realized how unpopular the U.S. election is becoming? It's not democratic enough. There's only two parties and no more. They need data mining. Tim, I'd like your thoughts on that. I mean, isn't this the way to deal with apathetic voters?
It is and it isn't. On the one hand, one of the big reasons they do this is because there are fewer and fewer so-called independent voter or undecided voters, and so they're looking for people who sort of would normally support Barack Obama and just don't know it, or they would normally support Mitt Romney and just don't know it. And so in that sense, it's expanding the electorate a lot. They're able to sort of go into communities that might not get visited by the campaign normally, and pick out voters and reach them and target them and drive them to the polls. On the other hand, they're they're being much more direct and confining who they're interacting with, and so they're not casting this sort of blanket appeal that they might have done otherwise. And so then you might leave some folks behind, and you just sort of cast them aside. So I think it sort of depends on how you use it. One way that it might be more democratic is with sort of the rise of these more open source programs like Nation Builder, which basically is a new startup that provides free voter lists to folks who subscribe to it, and so that allows sort of down ballot candidates to have access to a lot of this political data that they might not otherwise have had.
That's interesting. Just looking at the kind of anecdotally, did it seem like it changed people's minds today?
I don't know of changing minds or informing them.
Yeah.
There's a tweet here from Nasdahan who I think kind of wraps this up. Alex, she says, somehow, could it simply be about targeting the right kind of votes from the right kind of demographics in the U.S.?
Well, that might be from the campaign's perspective, right? I mean, they're actually have been targeting people that they want to get registered based upon their past behaviors, or based upon what they think their past behaviors might be extrapolating by the data they have about them. Again, the campaigns are in it to win it. Right, so if that's a different judgment than you might look at other places. I mean, overall, this all boils down to citizens, people who are, have this capacity, need to be more digitally literate, and this is true whether you're being targeted for, retail, or health, or finance, or politics. In every case, know how to anonymize yourself, know how to get rid of cookies, know how to get your data back. Be part of advocating for more data control, be part of advocating for more transparency. Know that there are rewards to being personalized. Look at Amazon, right? Amazon knows the stuff I might want, but they're getting that because they're able to track what I'm doing. Now, in some other areas, like voting, which for many people may be a sacred thing that they want to keep private, then there may be some uncanny boundaries we have to be very careful about crossing. And I think this year, this election season, some people may find that happen to them, particularly if they receive more of the cards in the mail, which use this nudge idea, right, of behavioral economics to try to push them over into a different kind of decision. Or they receive calls from their friends, families, colleagues, other people that have been brought towards them through their social graph on Facebook, which is something.
What about you personally? How do you feel that you're one of these numbers, and that this is we're talking about this as if we're all observers, but the truth is we're all targets as well, right? Does it bother you on a personal level? Are you concerned about it on a personal level?
It's something I think about a lot. I mean, I have a pretty large surface area online at this point. And if you did data mining of all of my tweets and all of my posts and all of those things put together, you'd start to be able to extrapolate some things about me, right? I think that the thing that I care about the most is being able to have some control over my data and over its use, or at least knowledge of how it's being used. That's one of the reasons that I don't worry quite as much about Facebook and social media as I do about the data brokers and what I can't control. The idea that, for instance, my mobile data might be given away, might be requested, that my conversations might be mined by government, right, or by other entities, quasi-governmental, without my knowledge. It's really about transparency and having some ability to control it on some level. Personally, I don't want my vote to be out there. I, at the moment, am a government technology journalist, right? That's not something I'm going to broadcast. It would be problematic on a lot of levels. Other people may choose differently.
Well, I live in the public because of Al Jazeera and because I'm on Air Force, and so I probably have a pretty high threshold for this stuff, but where it crosses the line for me and makes me uncomfortable is the idea of the cookies follow me around. It feels like I'm being spied upon. There's so much information out there about me. You can have it. I put it out there, but that seems like it's crossed the line. And the stuff with the credit companies like Equifax, I think is also a bit disturbing as well, because I know they have all my financial information, and you could draw a pretty accurate picture of my financial status by one report from Equifax. All right, so I got to wrap up. Thanks, Alex. As you mentioned, you're going to be with us for a while tonight. You guys are doing some of the debate coverage.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to watch that. I also want to thank Trevor and Tim. Thanks for being with us today. I thought it was a great show. I really enjoyed it. On the next show, we're talking about consumerism and how to take the unnecessary stuff out of your life. So send us your thoughts on that. And until then, we'll see you online.